I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, number 111. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Hi, welcome everyone to this week's episode. Today, we're talking about the long game and why you should play it. The truth is, people are either playing the long game or they're not. There isn't an in-between. And my hope is that by presenting some of the things I want to present to you today, you can find yourself and get an awareness about how you are operating and what game you're playing. And then you can make a more conscious decision. Because I think so many of us unconsciously end up playing the shorter game, and we don't realize that's what we're doing, and we wouldn't say it that way, but that's the way that we're acting. And it's important to understand this concept of the long game, and if you're playing it and making a conscious decision to play it, because then your behavior changes, the way that you operate changes, the way that you make decisions changes. I'm actually going to start today with a couple of indicators that you might be playing the short game and you don't even know it. The first one is if you're in a hurry to get from point A to point B. There's a podcast episode that I did a while back called Don't Be in a Hurry. We'll put the link in the show notes so that you get the right episode number. But what this was essentially about, it's the same topic and the reasons why it's not a good idea to be in a hurry. And since then, I've gained even more experience and knowledge in dealing with people who, and myself, when you can start to pick up on the fact that you might be in a hurry and why it's so important to course correct when you pick that up. So when you're in a hurry, it's basically saying that you think that there is going to be better than here. And if you are saying that there is better than here, then essentially what you're saying is here is not good enough. Now, of course, we all have dreams and aspirations, and we want to grow our businesses. We want to accomplish personal goals. It's not a reason to not go for something. But when you are saying there is better than here, you are dismissing here. And anytime you are dismissing here, you are basically trying to run from it or escape it, instead of really appreciating here what it is right here, right now. And that appreciation, that feeling state of appreciation goes a really long way with actually getting yourself where you want to go. It's a much stronger burn of a flame, a much stronger foundation from which to build for your own future when you appreciate deeply what you want right here, right now. And when you bring the energy to whatever you're going after, whatever dream, goals you're going after, when you bring the energy of hurry to it, it is more chaotic. The result is more fleeting. The journey along the way is not as rich as it could be. And it's not the way that you really want to live. It's a very ungrounded place to build from. And if this is sounding woo-woo for any of you out there, just bear with me. Use your own language, but understand what I'm saying here. There's a truth here that's worth grokking. So when you are going after something, make sure that you appreciate right here, right now. And yes, you are going for something bigger, but it's not to run from where you are. It's because you want to see what's possible. You want to see what you're made of. You want to see the good you can do, the impact that you can have. It goes back to this quote of you're always reaching for the next rung on the ladder, but you know it's not about the next rung. It's about the reach. It's about the version of you, like who you have to become in the going after of the next goal. It's rising up. It's seeing what you're made of. It is not sprinting and panting and being out of breath and knocking things out of their way on the way there. And then you get to the next rung on the ladder at the goal that you wanted to reach and you're out of breath. You're sort of wasted and burnt. And yet you're going to go for something else again, because this isn't good enough. You don't even appreciate fully for very long where you got. And then it's on to the next. It's like this race. That is playing the short game. And people that play the short game burn out and have less success than people who actually are playing a long game and are willing to keep a solid perspective of the big picture, appreciate where they are right now and where they're going, and enjoy the journey along the way there. That does not mean that every moment is a joy. That's not what I'm talking about. It just means that you can actually see the beauty unfolding. You trust that there is so much unfolding and that the beauty of all of that, you have such a deep appreciation for that. You don't wish this moment away. I referenced it slightly on the podcast recently, or maybe a month or two ago. I had some pretty tough things in business come my way, as does every business owner as they're doing their thing. And those things that it was just natural barriers that arose or challenges that arose. And there was a moment, like there was an anxiety that took over and I didn't feel like I could take a deep breath. And I remember thinking, this, it's not just the good stuff. It's all of it. I say yes to all of it. I have the capacity for it. No, I don't know what to do next. Yes, I will figure it out. Take a deep breath and just really open up to the challenge. Don't constrict down and try to bust through it with some solution. No, you open up to all of it. And doing that gives you an appreciation for the challenge. Because the truth is, we could all go get a job working for someone else and not ever have to deal with those challenges that arise as a business owner, the kinds of challenges that you face as a business owner or as an entrepreneur. But we wouldn't do that. We started our own thing for a reason. We've got this in us, and this is our chance to expand and grow and be willing to say yes to all of it. So that's what I mean. It was like a moment for me of realizing that I actually had come pretty far with playing the long game, that the short game would have been sort of a short-term fix. How do I get the stress off of me at this moment? It's just a very irresponsible or immature energy that you bring to the challenge in front of you. When you're playing the short game, that's what it's like. And so all of this to say, if you are in a hurry to get from A to B, and A to B could be from where you are now to a goal that you want to meet, from the beginning of a project to the completion of a project, to the realization of a barrier or a challenge that you're facing, to the working through it to get to the other side where you've implemented a solution and you've overcome that barrier or challenge. So A to B can look very different. There's very different contexts where this could make sense. But if you are in a hurry to get from A to B, you need to take a breath and realize that being in a hurry is playing the short game. And playing the long game has a set of benefits that I'm going to go into in just a moment that is so worthy of your awareness to play the long game. The second thing that I wanted to share that's very easy, top of mind, that might be helpful to know if you're playing the short game is if there is a ton of pressure on an investment that you've made. Joey Vitale and I talked about this in an interview I did with him recently, which you probably may have heard on this podcast or have seen online. But that interview, I asked him, can he remember back to a time where he had a plan to get from point A to point B, and he was so certain about it, and then he was wrong. That's what you learn. Like, he tried to make it to point B and he was just wrong about the plan or the approach. So I asked him to talk about that. And the thing that came up for him was, in the past, he used to make investments to help himself get from A to B. And there was so much pressure on the investment to get from A to B, like within the quarter. Let's just use as an example. And how he will not operate that way now. It doesn't even cross his mind to operate that way now. And here's why. It's because you pay an amount of money, you make an investment towards a coach, towards a program, towards a course, maybe even towards a new team member, right? Like, you're hiring someone, but you're making an investment and you are banking on that investment getting you to point B. And there's a ton of pressure on it. And so we had this whole conversation, which was so fun and so good to dig into, which was essentially that it's good to look at the ROI. You should look at what you expect in terms of a return on investment, but you have to be willing to not need it so fast. If you need to make your money back so fast, then you should not be making the investment. Smart investments build wealth. They build strength. They build a stronger and stronger foundation for which to continue to grow. It's almost like when you make an investment and you expect a ton back from it right away, and there's all this pressure on it because you're in a hurry to get your return back. That's when the weirdness comes out, the creepiness comes out, the jerk side of us comes out when we apply all this pressure to the investment, whether that is an investment, like I said, in a person or a thing, it doesn't matter, but you get weird. That's because we're human, and that's what's going to happen when you apply all this pressure and you need pretty quickly. That's a poor investment. That's not a good investment. And here's the other reason why it's not a good investment is because basically what that means is that your risk is really high. Like you can't afford to not lose the money that you just invested. Then you shouldn't have invested it in that way. So wise investments are where you can decide, I am going to make this investment. I do expect a return, and I will work diligently to ensure that I get that return. And we'll see how long it's going to take to get that return. I think it's going to take X. It might take longer because sometimes that's how these things go. But let's go. Let's go. I'm all in. That's a very different energy that you bring to the investment that you're making, whether it's an investment of time, money, any resource that you have. And look, I think all of us can look at points where we've done that. And maybe if you're listening to this now, you can look at points where you've already done that. You're doing it right now. This is an opportunity to just take a step back and really look at the big picture and understand that that is a short game play. And that is not what you're doing. You're building a business. This is a long game. So how can you make less risky investments and not be willing to suffocate the life out of everything when you make an investment and you need? How can you be willing to make an investment and show up fully and go all in and expect and ensure that you get your return on your investment? But it doesn't need to happen fast. You're not in a hurry to get that investment back. Okay, I have this visual in my mind when I talk about this stuff, and it's this tree. Like you plant the seed for a tree, and it's got to grow. It's got to do its thing to be able to produce the fruit, or if it's a money tree, maybe to produce the money or to produce more time. But it takes time for this thing to grow. But as it's growing, it's like you're staring at the soil, and then finally it peeks through, and then you're staring, and you're like, what's going on? And so then you're trying to like pinch it so it like gets taller or something. And then it's like you're trying to manipulate it because it needs to hurry. It's not going fast enough. This thing could have grown into something really remarkable, but instead you squashed it because you needed something out of it before it was developed fully. And that's what it makes me think of is, I think I said this word earlier in this episode. Maybe I did. Maybe it was somewhere else. But it's a sign of immaturity as a business owner. And part of developing yourself as a business owner is gaining this maturity where you don't feel the need to have to do that. And it's because you're making the calls from a different place. So I don't know if that visual is helpful at all, but that is exactly what happens when we are in a hurry and need something quickly out of an investment that we made. Now, kind of shifting away from thinking about like, are you playing the short game when you could be playing a long game? Okay, so now let's shift into, are you playing a long game? Here's some indicators that you are playing a long game. Some of this came from a recent episode that I talked to my husband about the wee things, the small things that matter. And one of the points he made in there, which he's actually never said it like this in a personal conversation, so I was so glad it came out this way on the episode, was that focusing on the really small things that almost seem irrelevant, but they are multipliers. Irrelevant to the goal, irrelevant to the dream that you have that you're working towards, whatever, but they're multipliers. And so one example he gave is sleep. If you're playing the long game, getting sleep is a good thing to make sure that happens. It's like a non-negotiable, because it's a multiplier. And, he gave the example that day, if you don't have enough sleep, you could work a 10-hour day and it's as good as a 6-hour day if you are well rested. And so sleep could be considered a multiplier. And once you identify the multipliers, the little things that you could do that actually give you leverage, then you know to invest your time and effort into those small things because it is a multiplier for you towards where you actually want to go. If you're playing the short game, then that means you don't make time. You cut out the little things that are the multipliers because in the moment they don't feel as important because you're so myopically focused on the hustle and the speed and you're in a hurry. When you're not in a hurry and you're playing the long game, you actually have perspective on all of that and you can see that it is a lever to pull to actually get the sleep that you need. So commit to the action of the multipliers. What is it? And, taking care of yourself, there's things that will differ for everyone, but really taking care of yourself so that your energy stays up and your drive stays up with where you're going. But then also, there's other things inside the business that you can do that don't take very long, but they can easily get squished out if you're playing the short game. If you're playing the long game, that stuff doesn't get squished out. Meaning, for example, looking at the metrics that you track on a very consistent basis, like maybe weekly. It depends on you and what makes sense for you. But if you have a weekly cadence, a meeting with yourself to sit down and look at all of those numbers and to analyze it and to look for patterns and to get curious about the numbers, that is a small amount of time that you would give to looking at the metrics that is a multiplier because you have an understanding that you didn't have before. You're clued in and you're close to the numbers that you wouldn't be if you just keep shoving it out because you're busy with other things. So what are the multipliers for you? Identifying those things and being very consistent. One foot in front of the other with those things. They are non-negotiables. You show up for those things. And it is usually the we things, if you listen to that podcast episode a couple weeks back. So that is a sign that you are playing the long game when you are deliberately paying attention to the we things that are multipliers, the we things that make a difference over time. And those don't get shut out because you are playing the long game. Setting and building the foundation for which you can continue to grow in a really strong, stable way does not happen overnight. It takes time. And so even just acknowledging this and making decisions starting today to start to pay attention to the multipliers, to the we things that matter, to making plans and honoring your plans, to expecting ROI out of something that you made an investment in and showing up fully and not needing to be in a hurry. It's just not what you need. You don't need something from that investment. Of course, you expect a return from the investment, but it's not going to crush your business or crush you if you don't happen to get it in as quickly as you thought you might get it. All of that way of operating will deliver you to a result that is so desirable and will be sustainable and will delight you and give you all the things that you imagined for yourself with the freedom and the money and the business and the life that you love because you played the long game. When you play the short game, all of that is very fleeting and it won't change until you start to play the long game. And then once you start playing the long game, you're going to get on this path and there's going to be these temptations of like, this isn't going fast enough. Take a breath, slow your roll, and stick to what you know means you are playing the long game, which is all the things we talked about on this podcast. Stay with it. The consistency of showing up in that way will deliver you to the life and the business that you really want. As this is recording, we are in the September sprint, and one of the participants, their lessons today, she mentioned the long game in her lesson. And it was essentially that on the business time, on the business work for the business, like must be scheduled, and it is a non-negotiable. It must be that way because otherwise she's not playing the long game. basically when she's cut out the on the business work, she notices that she spins. It's almost like a hamster on a hamster wheel. And so I thought that was great and timely because this is the podcast episode I'm recording today. So I thought I'd share that with you. Now, that's a we thing. You schedule time to focus on the business. And when you're making your plans, that's when you decide exactly what you'll do in those windows of time. But having that window of time that you honor and you don't not honor it. Because when you don't honor it, that means you're playing the short game. You're cutting out the very thing that helps keep you developing and paying attention and having a broader perspective and making decisions and making investments. On the business work is extremely important to help build the foundation that's necessary to build the business that you are wanting. So that's another example of a we thing, is the on the business work. So I thought I'd share that with you. And then the final thing, that if this helps bring it home in any way, my husband and I were talking about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of that. He's well-versed in cryptocurrencies and NFTs and blockchain and digital, all the things, right? And he was looking at some charts. I was looking at them too. And we were talking about how crazy certain things have been and how crazy certain things are right now. And his beliefs based on everything he understands. And when he's looking at charts and all of that and talking to the people he's talking to, I mean, he has really specific beliefs about what is going to happen with cryptocurrencies, but specifically Ethereum and Bitcoin and NFTs. And so we're talking about making investments because we have friends that will buy Bitcoin and then it goes up a little bit and then it starts to go down and they freak out and they sell it. And Derek has held on to his Bitcoin since he bought it, period. He's never let it go. And now he'll make some strategic decisions, but really he's playing the long game. And what's fascinating is everyone who's playing the long game is winning, period. There's no way around it. You are winning by a factor that's beyond imagination. And those playing the short game, if they're winning, it's not by much. And then they have to get back in the game. If they want to get back in the game, it's like a freaking rat race. And those who are calm and those who are just observant and watching and don't need anything from the investment that they made into it, they are winning. And it's so fascinating to see how this plays out across, not just in the markets, but in business. It's the same idea. In your business, what kind of investor are you with the markets, whether it's cryptocurrencies or traditional markets? What kind of investor are you there? Are you like an in and out kind of person because you need that quick return? Or do you play the long game? Like you make smart decisions and wise decisions and do your best to play the long game. It's the same thing that can be applied to the investments that you make and to the expectations that you have around certain decisions inside of the business. It's the same thing. So we got into a pretty fun conversation last night about that and about you win in the long game. And then thinking about Sir Alex Ferguson, right? You heard those episodes likely just a couple episodes back. He played the long game, so much so that he even stated, which I think I shared in the podcast, our plan was now our foundation. And it took 3+ years for that to happen. So for 3+ years, he worked his plan. He stayed steadfast. He stayed consistent. He was all in on his decisions and his investment in the plan. And it took 3+ years for it to start to shift, where he could feel now the foundation is in place and they became the best team in the world at one point, certainly in the league. And I mean, that kind of a thing, that's the long game. So hard to be patient sometimes, but keeping this perspective is important no matter what you're investing in. And if you're making an investment for a quick hit or because you need something from it like very quickly or else, think twice, my friends. Think twice. Who do you need to be in order to have the kind of firm that you want to have? This is the kind of thing that's required for us to develop ourselves to be able to make the right calls, even when we want to be impatient, even when we want to get a quick hit from something here or there. Understanding what is the wise call, what's the long game call. Most of the time, when we're talking about what we're talking about with business and building your firm, it's going to be the long game call that's smarter. Play the long game, my friends. Play the long game. All right, everybody. I'll see you here next Tuesday. Hey there. If you enjoyed this podcast, I highly recommend you come and check out Mastery Group. It is where owner attorneys come together to study this material, apply it, and thus create really big results for their firm and for their life. So come on over, velocitywork.com/join to get more information and get started. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.